I tell my kids all the time I'm just a quarterback on a field, orchestrating a play with multiple talented people, generally that know more than me, but I'm smart enough to know who they are.
Okay, good enough. Hi, this is Getty Schweikhauskas for the weekly podcast for Hudson Valley 1. And we want to find out something about the economy today. Everybody is theorizing what's going to happen, whether it's a good economy or a bad economy. And we have a guest who actually probably knows more of on-the-ground developments than anybody I know, and that's Joe Deegan.
Wow, thank you.
He and Tom Collins have this commercial and industrial real estate business.
We do.
And so when people come to the area or when they are in the area, they know who to go to for what's going on.
We'd like to think
Joe,
so.
what's going on?
We'd like to think so, Getty. Thanks for having me join you today. We like to think of ourselves as kind of unofficial or official ombudsman of Ulster County and the Hudson Valley region in general. Often a commercial real estate brokerage firm is somebody's first entree into an area. And I always view that phone call as something kind of sacred when that comes in, that, I'm that person's first impression of Kingston, right. Ulster County, the Hudson Valley. And
they assume that which is true, that you have a lot of local contacts at all levels, and you can get the word out when there's a word that is important to making your business and the county's business more successful.
Correct. It's all one big happy family at the end of the day, right? It's got to work for the buyer tenant. It's got to work for the local municipality. It's got to work for the architect, the engineer. I tell my kids all the time I'm just a quarterback on a field, orchestrating a play with multiple talented people, generally that know more than me, but I'm smart enough to know who they are.
Okay, good enough. So anyway, you're kind of the filter between the people who are considering business opportunities and the rest of the community, and you perform that function well.
Well, thank you. And I'll stop all the sports analysis, but I think one of the things we do that needs to be done, you need to look where you are on the playing field and realize if you can get to the end zone. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite phrases given to me by our former county controller, Elliot Auerbach. Get to a no as quickly as possible. That sounds very negative. It's not meant to be. Mm-hmm. We need to surmise as quickly as possible. Tenant or somebody who wants to purchase real estate or sell real estate comes in and says, I want to accomplish X. And I have this type of a budget, and this is what I need to do. And we need to look at a whole bunch of different variables. Zoning, planning, financing, how much cash do they have to go into a transaction? What's their long-term objectives? I tell people all the time, there's two ways to control real estate. You can own it or you can lease it. Both have tremendous advantages depending on what your end game is. Mm-hmm. But what we really try and do is look at when somebody comes in, how are we going to get them to the end zone in the quickest way with the least tackles, the least bumps in the road, or we're not going to get you there. There's not a way to accomplish this in the manner you've described.
Okay. So now, there probably has been more change in society because of the pandemic, because of the economy, because of various other kinds of things that are going on than ever before.
Tremendous.
And businesses that were not possible or didn't exist 2 years ago, whole industries are up. Changes such as the decline of the malls and the increase of shopping by with Amazon and the like. It's just a different world, to say nothing of the the B&B phenomenon, the food at home phenomenon, etc. It just is incredible.
I think you're right, clearly, but I think all of this was already well entrenched and moving. The pandemic put a magnifying glass on it, put an accelerant on it. It put kerosene to a match. Were we, for better, for worse, going to become a more online buying society and all of these trends you just mentioned? Yes. This just made it happen in 12 to 24 months. It just rapidly accelerated where I think we were going anyway. I remember talking to somebody who knew more than me. They were on some Zoom call about their industry and trends and whatnot, and somebody on the call said, we were gonna eliminate 1,500 square feet or 15,000 square feet of our office space. Anyway, we've been talking about doing this forever and having, Department X work from home, but as my father used to say, 99% of the time, 99% of people resist change. We don't like to change as human beings. We kind of like to do what we do every day. So this forced companies to go, you know what? We can ship that department to work out of home. Lord knows I'm a commercial real estate broker. I don't really love what I'm saying right now, but reality is reality. And the world has had a major ground shift. And part of that, so says Joe, will stick around for the very long term, and part of it won't.
Yeah. Well, that's often true. There are different fashions in business as well as in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
But despite those changes in fashion, there's there are underlying trends that are going on, as you say, whether we like it or not.
Yep.
And they just change they change everybody's world, including yours, and you are in the position where you're sort of an early warning system.
Yes,
of some of the stuff that's happening.
Yeah. Let me just make one more comment on our last topic.
Sure.
Because I'm just a collection of stories I hear. It's all I really am at the end of the day. And I had a local appraiser who I like and respect a lot, say to me, his son just got this fairly neat position, neat job down in Atlanta, Georgia, who's going to be hired remotely, was going to work remotely, good salary, good benefits. And his comment to me was, what a horrible experience. There I was thinking this was going to end with, congratulations, your son got a great job. And he said, he's not going to be able to see people at the water cooler. He's not going to bump into them at the hallway. He's not going to be able to read his boss's body language. He's not going to understand a whole lot about what goes on with human interaction in an office and how to navigate that. That was a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of good reasons to work remotely and be remote, and then there's that loss of human contact. And 90% of body language, or 90% of human communication is body language.
Well, we're in what they're increasingly called the hybrid world.
Yeah, we are.
Where you don't abandon the office entirely,
right.
You just go in less. I noticed, for instance, that there was in the New York Times today that the subway traffic in New York City, which had been down 90% at the bottom, is now about half what it is. And that half is service workers, people who have no choice.
Right.
Not knowledge workers who do have a choice. And they said it's about half of what it was. But the traffic pattern at different stations and places is different. Lower Manhattan, which used to be so crowded, is much less so because it's mostly office space, where Brooklyn is certain stations in Brooklyn are much more crowded.
Yeah. Because
people have to go to work, they have to take the subway, they have to take the risk, virus or not, and we're increasingly in that kind of world, and that creates problems but opportunities as well.
Always.
Yeah.
There's always a yin and yang to everything.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Another story I tell, echoing the one I just did. So I get a phone call, as you say, we are on kind of the front lines, and I enjoy that role. And I got a phone call from a financial advisory firm in the Hudson Valley in August of 2020. Nobody's been in the office since March. We're remote. We Zoom. We've mastered this. We're done. Give us a proposal to sell our building.
Uh-huh.
We did. Tom and I went up, took a look, told them what we thought market value was, how long it would take to sell, reminded them that if they were no longer going to use office space and this was office space, the buying or tenant market was very slim. Yep. Did what we always do, followed up with them every 90 days, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it was 6 or 9 months later, the CFO said, you know what, we've scrapped that plan. Mm-hmm. People working from home, dogs barking, kids yelling, screaming, not a conducive atmosphere for their staff. We're going to repopulate the office. We're going to do a hybrid model, but we are not going to sell our office. Yeah. You're going to see both. You're going to see both. You're going to see people who never step foot back in an office, and you're going to hear those stories. And that's just human nature. Well, so I don't think commercial real estate's dead, but you would expect me to say none other.
2021, as you know, was an amazing year for residential sales.
Tremendous.
Just unprecedented, huge.
20% bump.
And I just did an article on it. And the second thing to know about that is that other areas of the country where there's a lot of growth, like Florida, the mountain states, parts of California, they all report the kind of growth that we have here in Ulster County this past year, 20% or so.
Yep.
But in the city, New York City, it's in the low single digits, 4 or 5%, and so you had in residential, you have this pattern that we're suddenly the hot place, and part of the reason is that people have a hybrid existence. Now, how has it affected commercial? The pattern seems to be quite different.
It is totally different. Great question. Residential has seen this year over year, double-digit increase in values and in activity, right? There's two kind of general metrics to measure. One is price increase or decrease, and then number of unit sales, right? The two are related but different.
Right. I noticed that in residential, the supply of houses that turned over is about what it is in most years, except the supply, the number of months of houses available dropped from 8 to 4 in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's 8 months to 4 months in 2 years. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is.
That isn't true of commercial or industrial.
So commercial, the good news for us is we are busy. We are transacting a very high pace of volume of both leasing and sales. There's really no bad news, but we have not seen the price escalation that residential has. Uh-huh. I mean, we've seen a price increase, but frankly, that again was here before the pandemic. People had discovered Kingston, and I've been here just about my whole life, and always wondered when that day would happen, if it would ever happen. That happened in 2016, 17, 18. Commercial real estate was on a significant lift. So the pandemic magnified absorption, tenants coming into the area, listing and selling of real property. We did not see a 20% increase year over year like residential.
Right. Well, what did you see? Did you do flat or up a little bit? Or
we don't.
Depends on the category.
The residential world's really easy to track, right? The house is a house, sort of. I know they're very different houses, but commercial real estate is far. You've got retail, multifamily, industrial, land. It's a much broader and diversified mix of product types.
Yep.
So to say what that increase year over year, I don't know, but it wasn't 20.
No, of course not.
It was less. But that's okay. I mean, it's still robust. Listen, in March of 2020, my business partner and I looked at each other and we're looking for oxygen masks. We watched deals fall out of contract, people scramble, understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going into triage mode pretty quickly, as was a ton of other businesses.
Okay, so you're saying that right now the residential has been going straight up, and it's sort of at the peak where right now in terms of increase each year to year, but commercial is not. Commercial peaked maybe 3 years ago.
No. You're defining peak as rate of value of rate of appreciation.
Okay.
I think.
Yep.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, let's use that.
I don't know. I wouldn't say that's a peak. Listen, all markets go up, all markets go down. Mm-hmm. Is it reasonable to expect another 20% year-over-year increase in residential? I would say probably not. But I don't want to say the peak was 2018 for commercial real estate. I mean, I've never been long-term so bullish on Hudson Valley commercial real estate. Mm-hmm. In terms of just buying it, having it hold its value or likely increase at a reasonable rate. Yeah, I'm as bullish as I've ever been.
Okay, now the big kahuna these days is, of course, the iPark 87.
Yeah.
Because that's, when you're talking about 2 million square feet of space, plus you're talking about quite a supply. And the kind of people who bought into this are quite interesting to me. I like their style. I think they remind me more of
quality people
of Scott Dutton's.
Yeah,
say
you might say
Fuller Building and stuff like that. That is they're used to taking problem situations and making them work. Making them very successful.
I don't know them well. I don't want to represent. I do. I have met with them.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with you. I think these are quality people. They're going to do the right thing. It's funny when I go to all my real estate conferences, so many people think of, arguably so, environmentally contaminated land, stay away, and all these problems. There's another part of the commercial buying public that views that as an opportunity. And I agree with that is where the opportunity is in a lot of commercial real estate. You want to go buy an office building or a retail plaza that's got this amount of rent and this amount of tenants, and it's kind of be what it's going to be for the next 20 years, more than likely. Mm-hmm. This is risk,
yep.
Opportunity, upside, reward. Done correctly, which it likely will be. And again, I got to tell you, I commend Pat Ryan and the legislature. They took the bull by the horns on this. I have no inside information. I want to be very clear with you. But in my mind, reading this, setting up Charles Schumer to make a site appearance last August.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And just announced a little thing called we're going to pierce the corporate veil of the current owner and the EPA is going to turn the screws. Well done. I'm not usually a fan of having government rain down on folks. That's not my thing. In this case, well done. Set the stage for Joe Cotter and his team to come in. Well done. I mean, I have a weird mind for dates. It's just who I am. Real estate closings. I can tell you when they happen. It's kind of what I do. Lease expirations. I know them. February 3rd, 1998. The day the former owner closed on Tech City.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming up on 24 years of nothing happening.
Yeah. It's really
nothing.
Terrible. It was like an incurable disease rather than
a ironically, I have to tell you, my father passed away on February 3rd of 2021, and I thought it was his last gasp of sending a subtle message. I thought there was some symbolism in his timing of his passing. At least I'd like to believe so. But yeah, it's time to move on to a different form of ownership that can get.
Well, if we are, as Cotter says, he needs our partnership, the community's partnership, to make this work.
Always.
And that's a kind of more participative role than kind of maybe we're used to. And it's the kind that I think that you're right, that Pat Ryan showed, and his gang showed in making this happen. So how do we best perform our part of that role differently than, say, we would have done in the good old Chamber of Commerce days?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I guess where my mind is going, which maybe I shouldn't say, but I will, is let's...
Oh, come on, you can. Yes.
There will be people that I don't get, and that's my prerogative, I guess, and I still understand, that will complain about whatever and however this thing's going to be done. It'll be wrong.
Yeah.
And look, we have a planning board and a public hearing process and public input processes for good reasons. Come up, be constructive. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that building should be here. Maybe it should look like this. Maybe the ingress, egress should be like that. Fine. You know, I've yet to see a plan go to a planning board that generally doesn't come out with a better plan after a planning board evaluates and comments on it. I'm not negative on that at all.
Yeah, and I think
not at all.
I agree with you, but I think that, you know, what we didn't see was kind of the degree of change. For instance, 10 or 20 years ago, who would think that localities would be competing for pot businesses?
Correct.
You know,
correct.
And yet it's happening. Or gambling becoming more legal everywhere, etc. Those are sort of changes that are comfortable to a country that has gone through prohibition of various kinds of things. But it's more than that. It's more that the kinds of business. I think there'll be more service businesses, more entrepreneurial businesses than there were, and those entrepreneurs are doing things which 10 or 20 years ago would have seemed rather odd. But
completely agree.
It's something where these people come to you with these very different ideas, and you say, well, I'm not going to write it off as a possibility. I want to learn about what these people are saying.
Yeah,
and that way, not only do we learn from young people, but we actually help the community.
Well, you asked the question, how can we embrace and help? And I'm giving you an answer that you got issues with something, just show them. And let's err to the positive side rather than the negative side. You know, I mean, I appreciate, I guess I'm still young enough in my mind, that real estate is a mystery to the general public.
Uh-huh.
It is. People hear tens of millions of dollars being spent in pilot agreements and taxes, and they sit there, understandably so, and go, how does all that make sense to somebody? It's a lot to digest and absorb. But that doesn't mean that person's evil, generally speaking. It generally means that person's trying to do the right thing. The average real estate developer, entrepreneur, is quite a creative individual that has an abhorrent amount of risk ability to take on, debt liability to take on. I mean, cheer these people on. They are taking incredible risks. And it frustrates me to watch people show up at the sidelines and just throw them spitballs. Make your comments. Make them positive. Give public input. That's welcomed. Let's get behind these people and let's help them.
Yeah, well, finding out how to do that, you know, what the recipe is, seems to be not easy. And you know, in every age, there's that difference between what people understand and what new stuff coming. You know, people don't like change, as you said.
We don't.
And yet, the more change, the better in certain ways.
Well, the only thing constant in life is change, right?
I thought I'd maybe get a little resistance to that idea.
No,
No.
not at all.
Okay.
No.
The only constant thing is change.
Yeah, we're always changing.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, it's just funny. Not that I'm really a student of history. I wish I was more so. My parents told me stories, and you've probably heard them in, 1958 or 60, whenever IBM came here, everybody resisted them. I shouldn't say everybody. The community largely was like, well, the uptown merchants were apparently very upset that their employees were going to go become IBM employees with better pay and better benefits. We always resist change, often for good reason. But when in your life, in my life, something that so many things in my life that I've looked at that I didn't like or was resistant to or feared or I didn't like as it was change, became a very positive thing.
Yeah.
Most things. It takes us a while to step through that process.
Some of us are more graceful than others in handling that.
Some of us are.
I wanted to close this by honoring your father.
Oh, thank you.
Who was a great man and a good friend.
Thank you very, very much.
I appreciated few people more than I did him.
Well, that means a lot to me.
He found a way of holding on to his values and yet adjusting to change too. He was a riot.
Well, it's funny. I will share with you. I got in my car today at about 6:52 a.m. I think I was on the road, and every now and then I found myself laughing out loud, thinking about something he had done or told me to do, and just kind of looked up and said thanks. It was a great father. It was crazy. So. He was a U.S. Marine from 43 to 45, and that defined his life, for better or for worse, mostly for better.
And one of the IBMers who became an entrepreneur successfully. Well, good. Thank you very much, Joe. Appreciate your presence and what you have to say, and take care.
Appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.